All right. This is our Father word. It's interesting. I was preparing to talk about something else, but on Thursday when I spoke with my brother Andres Paul, uh, before that I had a very interesting conversation with one of my colleagues who's in Chile. She's practicing medicine there, and she asked me a few questions that I heard it many, many times. I had the same questions before, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. How about if I start looking at it? And I usually struggle a lot to send the topics on time, and my brothers know that. But that time was just quick. I was like, oh, yeah, why don't I just talk about this that I just debated with my colleague? Okay, right. Now, I have to warn you, the topic of today is very, very, how do I put it? The human brain is not designed to understand it straightforward. God have given us a lot of clues, but unfortunately, especially now, our generation, last time generation, is even farther away from the spiritual things, so our brain does not comprehend that, right? Not only spiritual things, even natural things. For instance, we are living in a four-dimensional space. That's what science says, right? We have four dimensions, and out of the four, three of those dimensions is spatial dimension, and one is time. Yes, we understand what space is because we can move through it. We go back and forth, up and down. We can do that in time, in space, sorry, right? You can go back home as you can go forward. But we cannot do that on time, right? And time is very strange. That for me, it's like time is just like, for me, time is now. Past is past. It's non-existent. Future is only existing in our mind, so we don't understand. But it's real because we are here, we are alive, right? The other thing also is, and that's where the trouble is, because we can't see certain things, because our eyes can see, and remember, this is just one of our known five senses, we tend to disbelieve what we don't see. And thank God, I was like, one day I was wondering, right? And I want to ask you this question for you guys genuinely. How many of you, regardless of what you heard or read, I want to ask in your own experience, how many of you have ever seen a bacteria with your own naked eyes? Naked eyes? At least you saw it in a microscope. That's also a plus. But how many of us have seen that? Okay, let me ask you an even more difficult one. How many of you have seen a virus? Virus. Nobody has ever seen a virus, right? But we do believe they exist, and I believe they exist. I'm not trying to sound conspiratorial. I'm just trying to make us look the reality of our existence. Nobody has ever seen that, but we know that they exist. You know why? Because of the effects that they do into our body. That's how we know you got a viral disease or a bacterial disease, right? But biology, when we go to school, they teach us that these are living beings. Now, here is the thing. These are living beings that we don't see, but they do have an impact in our life. Okay, we can categorize them as a smaller form of living beings, right? Bacteria, simple forms of existence. We believe on that very easily, but we struggle to believe that there is existence of higher order of beings that we cannot see, however they do impact in our lives. Does that make sense? Right? And we are talking about this so far revealed, the angelic order of existence. Now, this makes us to go straight to this book right here, right? Now, this book, in my own genuine opinion, is a very, very strange book, right? All the books that you can read in your life, when it comes to the four dimensions that I just mentioned you, they either will take you to the past or take you straight to the present, right? And they really, really don't mean much about what impacts in nature. I'm not even talking about living things. I'm talking about nature, right? This is the book that if you read this book, you can travel in time from the most remote past. I'm talking about the origin to the future, right? It takes you in, makes you to navigate that time dimension that is strange to believe. And we have one part of it that is described as prophecy, that actually help us to observe what will occur in the future, right? With exactness, like really, really exact. Now, I also want to clarify one thing, right? How many of us, and I will do that in asking questions, how many of us read the Bible? You can put your hand in the air. Right. And how many of us study the Bible? Do you know what's the difference? What's the difference?
Studying the Bible is not only just understanding what God is saying to you, but it's also hearing God's voice.
Right. Perfect. Well done, my brother. So now, I always say, is studying and reading the same? No, they are not perfect synonyms. You know why? Because you can read something without studying, and you can study something without reading. Let me give you an example. Isaac Newton, his most famous theory. He went out and he was sitting down and he saw an apple falling. And he was like, oh, wow, an apple fell, why? And then now we know one of the most famous theory, the gravity theory, right? Oh, I think it's a law now, right? No longer theory, because it happens. We can see it. Did he read about it? There was no book about it. I don't know, but in my knowledge, there was no book. That he's probably the first one that introduced this phenomenon, right? So that's the difference, right? He observed, he used observation, and he used all what he could gather from his sense to explain a phenomenon that was taking place, right? Just the same as, so in summary, studying is the most complete way. There's different pages of the Bible, especially Jesus and Psalms, and that always repeat, say, read this book day and night. Early in the morning, keep reading. They always repeat, day and night. And you realize that, well, if you do something in a daily basis, that's what study entails. When you're studying something, you almost become obsessed to it. And you're not limited into that particular thing. You want to observe everything that is around. Now, and I'll show you some patterns here that can help us that. Thank God, our generation, because we were so far away from the original things. For instance, in the first 2,000 years of existence, there were way more direct manifestation of divine power. And you can see here in the Bible, even up to the first 4,000 years, like God was like physically manifested, like Mount Sinai. But we no longer have that kind of, I wouldn't say opportunity, but we also have a lot more light, right? One of that light is what we call the minor light, written by this lady here, Ellen G. White. Her name is not here, but this is one of the books, her books that I love the most, Patriarchs and Prophets, right? Now, there's a lot of controversy. Again, but if you apply what we just discussed, that studying is different from reading. And I remember, I grew up an Adventist. I was privileged. My mom, my grandparents. So I basically grew up knowing the Bible without even read it, because that's the thing in the house. And I grew up hearing about Ellen G. White a lot, in two ways. One, in a positive way, and you also know that she has the most criticism across the span. And I was like, okay, and I remember I was a teenager, around 15 years old. And when you're a teenager, your brain is going through a lot of revolutions, questions, existential, like, why is this? Why is this? And then I'll say, okay, let me see what this lady has written. Let me see it for myself. Mama said about it, everybody said it. Let me go see it for myself. And that's one of the most important prerequisites as a Christians today. It's not just what the speaker is saying here, but you have to go see things for yourself. Okay? So I decided to go read, and the most difficult book, even up to today for me to read, Great Controversy. The first 15 to 20 chapters are very hard to read. At the end, it starts getting beautiful. right? But in the beginning, it was tough. I read it again. No. Then I got a chance to get another book, Temperance. It was great, especially at that age. I read the whole book, and I was like, I don't see why people criticize this woman a lot. Trust me, my brain was from running 20 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour as soon as I finished reading those two books. And as of today, God has blessed me to dedicate a portion of my life to understand how the brain works. And I have never seen any other book outside of the Bible that will ignite your brain in a way than Ellen G. White. Just look at her semantics, the linguistics that she employs her. You will be forced to open up the dictionary. Today, people no longer do that, but that's good. It forces you to question, and she opens a lot of things. So therefore, I use her a lot. And in today's talk, I'm going to use her a lot, okay? Now, but before that, let's go back to the scripture reading. My brother read it very well. I appreciate it. And he was reading it in the, is it new version, right? NT. I have a King James version, but keep that one, my brother. The King James version, let me start like this. Revelation 12, that's chapter 12, and verses 7. Let's start on verses 7. It says, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. Let me stop there. We're going to progress there slowly. Let's dissect these things. First, I want to advise you. If you go across the whole chapter, the beginning of every verse starts and in the King James Version. For instance, 7, and there was. 8, and prevailed. 9, and only one, I think, is in verse 12 that says, therefore. It begins with therefore. So everything starts with and. Now, what was going on here? John, the disciple of God, was in prison in an island. I forgot the name. And Patmos. Thank you, my sister. And Jesus gave him a vision. And as he stood, he saw a vision of Jesus Christ. We can see it in the, and I recommend you guys to go read that first description of Jesus Christ very well, because I can tell you that is going to be what Satan is going to do in the next few, I don't know when he's coming. Read it very well. And John says it, and I don't want to read it for the sake of time, but I'm sure my brothers all read about that introduction. That's one of the most famous revelation of Jesus Christ. In fact, that's the revelation of Jesus Christ. But what John saw is, he said, I saw one like a son of man. So here, John saw a glorified human form of Jesus Christ. That's all that my brain and your brain can perceive, okay? Our brains only understand the Jesus human. Wherever you try to make an imagination, which is one of the functions, you receive sensorial experience, and then you create an image. The image we are given is a Jesus, beard, long hair. That's the human form. He has 2 legs and 2 arms, just like us. And that's exactly what John saw, but with a lot more glory, right? He was shiny, more than the sun, right? His eyes were like fire. That's Revelation, I think it's Revelation 2, chapter 2. Now, this is the Jesus that already have lowered himself into a human form. Remember, even Ellen G. White said, Jesus have humbled himself by taking our nature. Even though in heaven he is glorified, he still lowered himself from his original form. Now, why am I starting right there? Because the topic is war in heaven, right? Well, we have to understand the subject of the war, what led to that war. That's why we're starting with the main character that led the whole fight, that the whole fight was centered in. This is the Jesus. But as fallen beings like you, we cannot see beyond that was revealed. We can only see and understand what is look like humans, right? So the question is, what was Jesus before he became Jesus? Sorry, before he became human. That was the point, right? He was in a different majesty. In fact, Ellen G. White in different other books, he say, when we behold in heaven who Jesus was and whom he became, that is going to be the source of how we're going to be, wow, I praise the Lord for how humble he became. This was Jesus before. I think in the Bible they call him Michael. It's like a powerful, powerful being. There was a high, lofty throne in heaven just for Jesus. I'm just trying to come close to describe it, but I have no clue what I'm talking about. All I'm trying to say is like, he was not the one that we are used to hear. Obviously, he made himself human. And when we see him again, he's still another human being with hole in his hand. Okay, no different. Now, forget about the human Jesus first. Let's go back. I recommend us to always look at what happened behind closed doors, before the human existence, so that we understand what's actually coming in the next few, I don't know, years. It's too close to happen, the end of time, that we need to understand what happened before. That's what I say. If you want to understand the problem, go to the root. You need to see what happened in the beginning. And this is what we're trying to address. There was a Jesus, powerful, just as Father the Almighty. He was called Father the Almighty God. He was not called Jesus. In heaven, he was called the Almighty God. See the difference? Now, beneath him, there was a created being. I know we don't talk about him that much, and it's okay not to talk about him that much, but sometimes you want to see who your enemy is, in order so that you know how to fight. There was a being just below Jesus. So that means that was the greatest created being, the greatest created thing ever. And let me give you an example. So the Bible actually describes this in the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel, if you guys are with me there, chapter 28. I'm going to read it very quickly. Before I read, let me tell you, that being is what we are fighting today, called Satan, right? And then it says, Son of man, take up upon the king of Tyre and say unto him, thus says the Lord God. He's talking about Satan. Thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. The sardius, topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, sapphire, emerald, and the carbuncle and gold. The workmanship of the tabrets of thy pipes were prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. Let me stop here for a little bit. This description is a human language, okay? They describe what is precious in human at that time. You know, precious stones is precious to us. But it's way beyond this, right? Remember who wrote this is Ezekiel, human being. He saw a lot more than what he described. He needed to fit it in a human language. And unfortunately, and you can see in linguistics, especially some language like Hebrew language, it didn't have more than 3,000 vocabulary. Like, I can give you another example. English language, I speak Portuguese and English very fluently. If I have to write a one-page essay in English, if I translate it in Portuguese, I'll have 3 pages, right? Because there's way more vocabulary, right? So there's linguistic constraints in everything. Now, there's one thing he says, it was in Eden, right? That doesn't mean there was a Garden of Eden there. The Garden of Eden is simply, when even the one we had in earth, is a dwelling place of God, right? It's an extension. No wonder why Adam was seeing Jesus at the end of the day. He was going to talk to him what he did, right? That's the dwelling place of God. So in Eden means Satan was in the immediate presence of God, okay? Now, thou art the anointed cherub, verses 14, thou art the anointed cherub that covered. That's another linguistic thing. I repeat, thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. The question is, covered what? Covered the glory of God, okay? And I have set thee, I have set thee so, right? Thou wast upon the holy mount of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Let me give you an example. Remember the sanctuary? There's a place that not everybody could access, but one person could access. Before the sin and everything else, Satan was that person that was between the most holy and everybody else. Whatever God wanted to communicate, it was through him that everybody. So basically, in the sanctuary, what happened with the high priest? Whatever God communicated, he told the high priest, and then the high priest went to tell the whole congregation. That was the thing. So that was it, and I'll give you another analogy. Thou wast perfect. That's verses 15. In thy ways, from the day you were created, thou was created, until iniquity was found in thee. And then it described what actually was in his heart. Isn't it interesting that the Bible actually describes what people are thinking? By the multitude of thy merchandise, they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the manner of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. That's the part I actually pay more attention. His heart was lifted up because he was so beautiful, right? Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom because of your brightness. You were shining. Am I not more bright than these other beings? That's what he was thinking. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before the kings that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuary by the multitudes of thy iniquity, by the iniquity of thy traffic. Therefore I will bring forth a fire from the midst of thee. I shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all men that behold thee. All they that know thee among the people shall be astonished at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt thou be anymore. Good prophetic description, right? Let's go back a little bit. Satan was the covering cherub. Basically, it was the one who made the will of God manifested to the other created beings. In this case, they revealed angelic host. There's other beings, but this is the ones we know, right? Nobody knew anything until Satan came, and therefore angels had joy in obeying Satan because they knew by obeying Satan, they were obeying the voice of God, okay? Give a quick example. God actually replayed that in Israel. He chose Moses, right? Moses went to the mountain, saw God, spoke with God, came up shining. Every instruction, Moses would go and then come and tell the people. Remember what happened at the end? Moses got tempted and misrepresented God by smacking the rock 2 times. He did not do what God told him to do. He did not, it's heavy, but I'm going to say, he did not follow the commandment that just talk to the rock, don't smite it. But he went there and misrepresented the glory of God. Because of his position of being the one who brings, you see, whatever he does could quickly create a huge effect in the other people who don't have the direct access. Therefore, God was a little harsh on him, didn't even allow him to go to pass through. But thank God Jesus defended Moses. Amen. Jesus said, Father, Don't punish him because I paid his price already. So that's another example. But in the case of Satan, it was a whole different story. Now, using this, right, that's what I say. Now, the study part came in because I read this part and I'm like, what is that? What does that make sense? Let me find everything that speaks about this. Now, a little bit back. Back to Revelation now, right? We now have an idea of Satan. John was there sitting, and suddenly he started seeing everything that was shown to him, right? Let me just bring it back. He started seeing all this war that happened. And you can imagine, the way he described it seems like he was shown scene by scene in succession. And there was war in heaven, and there was this, and there was this, and there was this. And he kept on describing. John didn't write anything out of his own imagination. He just tried to write everything he saw. The same thing I discovered when I first read the story about this lady, Ellen G. White. That's also what happened. I was like, how come this woman is the most prolific writer in the history? They don't say that in the TV, but she's the most prolific writer. She has, I don't know how many books. I'm going to boast a little bit. I try to read half of them, her books. I'm trying to compete to try to read everything. Right? But she described that most things that she wrote was a vision. God actually took her into different stages. When she describes the story here in the Patriarch and Prophet, was all vision. She saw Adam. And the other scary part, she even saw Satan. Right? So God has shown her that. And I wondered, why would God do that almost 6,000 years after? Why nobody else have seen a complete vision of the great controversy as this lady? I was like, oh, that makes sense. Because by the time we are, the circumstances have changed so much that it's very hard to look parallels of the past and compare. How can you describe to somebody in the past who lived without air conditioning, who never seen a car, who walked 50 miles when they have to travel, they use their legs. They didn't drive no cars. You see how big the difference was? And linguistically, you see how the descriptive language is here in Revelation. And I see this, and I see this. And this is not how we write essay today, right? So God decided to bring somebody who have a contemporary mindset, who can bring those descriptions in the Bible in our language, in a way that we can understand with our current living. Okay? So that's why I was like, okay, it makes sense now when I'm reading this story in comparison with the Bible. It makes sense. Why is it? Now, she described a thing that I'm going to summarize it. But I recommend you to look this book, Story of Redemption, and this. The one reason I was like, I used to think heaven is like this peaceful area and stuff. And I thought when there was a war in heaven, all they had is just talking to each other. Oh, don't do that. And I was like, wait, that's just a war? And I then later on realized, no, that was not the case. They actually had a fight. Yeah. So when they described the war in heaven, okay, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angel fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought back. All right, now we know a little bit about Satan, the next biggest created, well, the biggest created thing so far. God himself said that, is here in the Bible, right? And he felt like, I am this big, this shiny, and this beautiful. I should be equal to Jesus. Why am I treated differently? Right? Why God have decided to create the universe that we now know, the world, why didn't he consult me as well to see, how we're going to make their future, if the nose would be long or small, why only Jesus? Oh, I feel that I'm being humiliated. So basically, and then by doing that, he was not genuine with his own true feeling, and he decided to go out and disseminating his feeling to the angels. But his purpose was to basically to dethrone Jesus because he became envious and jealous. This is actually the language Ellen G. White described. He was jealous of Jesus and envious, and his envy led him to everything. Now, I am not trying to justify or trying to say that that was the cause of his fault. There's nothing justified. We really don't know what really happened, what made him to feel so miserable in the presence of Jesus that he had to fight back. Now, he decided to go to these angels and create a propaganda. You know, and the propaganda based on one thing. The highest thing the human, let me put it this way. Every intelligent being, a prerequisite for you to be intelligent is one. It's called freedom. The moment that one is out, there's no way, even in the basic functioning of your brain, there's no way you're gonna be in the category of intelligent being. Or, in another word, for you to be made in the image of God, a prerequisite for that is freedom. The freedom is the highest thing. I experienced two things in my life. I always use that. One was physical need, deprivation, and imminent death for a very long period. I was in war in my country. That was the thing, like hunger and, that was the thing. And then I went to another country there was not really much freedom. It was a communist country. And I have experienced, not directly, but I've seen most of my friends. I have indirectly, or maybe directly, if I would describe what it is to have no freedom. And I came out with the conclusion, I said, there's nothing worse in this life than to be deprived of freedom. Similar experience are the ones who are in jail. They can tell you it's the worst thing they can. It's not because they're not getting food. They've been treated physically. I don't know, maybe they have food. That's all I can say. But it still makes you feel miserable. So Satan used this freedom as his tool. He told the angels, if I'm not made your ruler other than Jesus, you guys will no longer be free. Because you have only experienced freedom because I have been the one telling you what to do. But this God, who has now made Jesus completely a whole ruler, he is now going to, reduce your freedom, with all his rules and laws. You're an angel. Look at you, you're shining. Your eyes is like a fire. Wherever you step, fire breaks down. You fly with 6 wings quickly. You have this light that, nothing outside will really affect you. You're strong and powerful. You don't need anything. You don't need nobody to tell you what to do. You can do it yourself. In fact, you can live on your own. You don't need Jesus. You don't need God. You don't really need to obey the law of God. Basically, that's also what she said. I'm resuming everything Ellen G. White said. To obey the law of God, you don't need to hear Jesus. You have in you, because you're an angel, you have good, natural good within you. There's nothing even great. Even God himself is not as good as your own nature. Angels are good in nature. That's what he was saying. And that's not what Jesus is saying. They're only good. There's only love among angels. You know why? Because they love God first. The love of God, the love towards God made them to love their fellow angels, and it also love humans like us. So he said, yeah, you're not going to have no freedom. I am the one who's going to give you freedom. Now, I'm saying this because I hope this sounds familiar. Everywhere in the world, evil always comes with the pretense of good, a greater good. Okay? And that's what Satan did. That's why it was so difficult for the angels. Being very intelligent was so difficult for them to discern because they were like, Satan didn't come across as somebody who's opposing God. He came across as somebody who's actually trying to improve God's government. That's where the problem is. Now, Satan knew what he really wanted. He wanted to overthrow the supremacy of God, of Jesus especially. Obviously, Jesus is God. Yeah. So that's what he really wanted to do. But if he would have just said it outwardly to the angels, they would click, oh, that's what you want. No, he can, no, listen, I'm just trying to show you what you have not seen. I am the covering cherub. That means I talk with the Father directly. I know him. And that's true. That's why God didn't tolerate, I'll put it that in another context. He definitely knew God well, way more than any other created thing so far, apart from Jesus. So he used that knowledge, that position of advantage, in his own advantage, but then he didn't say his true motive. It's like, hey, I'm actually trying to improve. So Ellen G. White in A Patriarch of Prophet, so this same story is described here in these two books, but this is way more descriptive. And he said how he would go, basically, you know, brother, you know that sister is like this. And, you know, now I put a seed of discord against your wife, and then I go to your wife, oh, you know, your brother is like this. And then outside here in the pulpit, oh, brother, let's forgive each other. We will, you know, that's basically his attitude. He was creating dissension. However, outwardly, in a Pharisaical way, demonstrating his zealous to God. You see the problem here? Sound familiar? If we find ourselves in that kind of circumstances now in our heart, you know, now we are reflecting the spirit of the enemy, right? Outward display of goodness with lack of real inner good that only God can give you, all right? Now, what he did, he left the presence of God. Number one, the biggest sin, leaving the presence of God. And he continued dissenting. God saw it, because God can read the heart, and say, this is going too far. I'm going to call everybody. In heaven, we're going to have a summit, and I'm going to have to help this son who's trying to go astray. And he said, listen, I know Satan is saying that I have exalted Jesus. I did not. Jesus was already God, right? Before you were created. The fact that he walks among you and he makes himself humble and smaller like you, that doesn't mean he is less God. He is God. And because of that, he has the right to be worshipped just like I am, because he is like me, okay? And as it was happening, there was something that Ellen G. White said, and I want to share that with the congregation. When God the Father came in, because it's a different light, also gave us another clue about that God the Father, yes, is in heaven, but it's not a direct access to everybody. Therefore, there was a covering cherub. But at that time, the Father and the Son, the Trinity, came to try to talk about the issue that was going on. And at that time, Satan, the rebellion squashed a little bit, especially at the time when the angels started to sing. And they said the spirit of rebellion almost was vanquished with that music. And I was starting thinking, wow, music is very powerful. Even Satan almost was converted by the song sang by the angelic host. Anyway, as soon as he had that strife in his heart, because it's like he acknowledged the truth, however, at the same time, envy and pride, and that is the huge problem. Pride forbade him, because he was high and exalted being. Now, being told that he was wrong, I think it sounds familiar. When you are in a certain position and of superiority, and one of the subjugates say, hey, boss, I guess you were wrong. It's very hard to take, right? That's the same thing. So like, I don't want to be that. And then he decided to continue to put his claim, and eventually he was convinced again that he was wrong. But then God said, because you don't want to change, your place in heaven cannot be. We cannot be, because it put the whole heaven in jeopardy you need to be gone, Satan. And there is when he say, I'm going nowhere, even if it means I am going to fight physically to keep my place in heaven. You doubt me? Let me read it for you. It's here, right? Let me find quickly. It's page, Story of Redemption is the book, page 18. It says, then Satan, exultingly appointing to his sympathizing, comprising nearly 1/2 of all the angels, and exclaimed, these are with me. That's the moment when God said, you will have to go, Satan. But he said, oh, you're trying to kick me out? Look, I have all these followers with me. Excuse me. Right, I have all these followers with me. Will you expel theirs also and make such a void in heaven? Right? He's like, okay, I know I did it wrong, but are you going to be so cruel to all these millions of angels will also they go through? And then he said, look at here, he then declared that he was prepared to resist the authority of Christ and to defend his place in heaven by force of might, strength against strength. Did you guys get the same thing I got? There was not just argument fight. They really fought physically, right? Again, now that's another thing. That's why I say it's it's beyond our understanding to understand what type of guns they use. Right? I don't know what they use, but what we know for sure, Ellen G. White have seen that there was a real physical fight. And therefore, in the book of Revelation say, and there was a war in heaven, Michael and his angel fought against the dragon, which is Satan, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither were their place found anymore in heaven. Remember, they're fighting now for their place in heaven. And they did have a real fight, okay? Now, and the great dragon was cast out, and that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out in the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So he was cast out of that. What I analyze as heaven is a spatial dimension. It's not like a whole world. It's a spatial dimension, right? He was sent into this void world, right? Before, I don't know, it's too complicated, but it's just trying to give you an idea, 2 different places, heaven and earth. It doesn't mean simply planet Earth, right? It's the whole space, right? And if you read it, you will see that after the fall, then God can create the whole earth and human beings. So Satan was already fallen at that time. The first fall, okay? Because he got kicked out how many times? Anybody know? 2 times. Satan was kicked out. The first time was by fight, war. The second time was because he lost his argument. Now, just to make it short, let's see. Let me just point this one here. In verses 10 say, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. Again, remember when I said in the beginning, this book has a lot of and this, and this. Every beginning of every verse is and. The Bible, in almost all the books, doesn't describe in one event in one chapter. It's all over the place. That's why it's designed for you to study, right? This part here in 10 is no longer saying about the original fight. The 7 and 8 was the beginning, the fight that I just described, right? Now, the verses 10 is describing the second fall. Okay, the second time he was kicked out. Because before he was not the accuser of the brethren, because he became accuser of the brethren when he led human beings to fall. And then he could go to heaven and complain that, hey, why are you going to save Andres? I sinned too, you didn't forgive me, and you saying you're going to forgive Brother Paul? Are we not all sons of God? Where is your justice? That's his argument, right? Now, Jesus, when Jesus died, it annihilated all his arguments. So that means the first 4,000 years, he was going back and forth and saying, why are you saving this one? Why did you? Actually, did you see what happened with Moses when he died? And thank God, the Bible is so beautiful. When Moses died, and one of the powerful angel, Gabriel, came to resurrect Moses, what happened there? Satan withstood him. You're not taking him. Argumentally, he's like, no, this man sinned. His last action was a sin. He rebelled against God. Therefore, he's bound into the same destiny and predicament as I am. Why are you taking him? If you take Moses with you, you guys got to reinstate me in heaven too. You guys got to give me a space. You don't have to kill me, because that was his point. That's why Jesus has to come and said the Lord rebuked him. Because Jesus came in his righteousness. He said, yes, he deserved to die. He's a sinner. But I died for him. I paid the price. So you have no argument. I paid the price and he believed in me. Therefore he's saved. Okay? Now, let me give you an idea what's really going on. And this is very important that we understand. Very, very important, especially in our time. When God created Adam, let me just give a quick background so that I don't have to read. Satan knew when he first was cast out, his hope was gone. He was destined to be destroyed. Amen. But as soon as God created human being, new idea. Wow. See, we're about to die, but then God created these guys. If I can lead them to fall into sin, then first, we can unite them into a fall. We can create a lot of commotion and cry and bitter and pain in heaven, right? Now, I know God will try to save them because they're just, they don't live, they're just small beings. They're innocent. And if God tried to save them, you know what? He has to save us. So Satan knew, you see how he knew God? He knew God is a just God, is mighty and fearful, but he also knew God was merciful. By leading Adam and Eve to sin, he was looking his own interest. He wanted to be saved. He don't want to die. Satan don't want to die, like any other living being. He don't want. Life is so good, even for Satan. Okay? So it's real. So he's like, no, I will do all in my power so that I can retain life. And if that means Adam and Eve have to fall, and even this book is clear. He said when he thought about tempting Adam and Eve, he actually trembled a little bit. He felt a little bit like, man, why would I do to these little babies? Mm-hmm. But then he's like, man, listen, I'm gonna save myself. I don't care if I'm gonna kill this baby. Sound familiar? Okay. Kill the baby so that I save myself. Because we are baby comparing to angels. We have nothing, right? Then he said one thing. Oh, if we lead them to sin, God will do something to forgive them. And if he forgives them, he can forgive us. But not only, God gave them one of the greatest things, the tree of life. It's not that it gives life, but it had some properties. Because once they fall away, and I don't know how long it lapsed, right? The farther away you are from God, the weak you become. Very simple. You can prove it to yourself. The farther away you go from God's laws and try to do whatever you want, you get yourself a lot of diseases. Simply. Eat the wrong type of food that God did not allow you to eat, did not recommend you to eat, or anything. You'll see your lifespan will shorten, right? And you get way more weakened. Israel was an example. Daniel is the greatest example. In 1 week, he proved this experiment. that if you do what God told you, he became stronger and even more beautiful and healthier than the other kids in the kingdom. Remember that? So the same happened to these fallen beings. They fell down and they were weaker than the normal angels in heaven. And it's like, oh, if we can just touch that tree of life and eat one, we're going to be strong again and we can pick up another fight. No wonder why God had the cherubs around the tree. Did you ever wonder why? Do you think it was that for Adam? Listen, Adam was, imagine, why would God and the Ellen G. White say in the same two books, the angels that were sent to preserve that tree were not ordinary angels. In fact, let me tell you one thing. There's hierarchy in heaven of angelics. Some angels are way more powerful than the other. Some have 6 wings, some have 2, some have 4. I don't know. I've never seen one, but I'm just going by what I read, okay? The book say it was one of the most powerful groups of angels, cherubs, that their appearance was so strong that they had something in their hand that looked like a sword. It was not a sword. It's something human eyes looked like a sword. That was not for Adam. That was disproportional. If with one voice, yeah, if with one voice God said, hey, you guys got to get out, Adam, they run away quickly. With one voice. God didn't need to put that much power unless he knew somebody stronger than Adam can come in, right? Those angels were there to prevent the fallen angels and Satan to come back into the garden and eat from that fruit and therefore regain their strength. Let me give you one example, add another example. How long did the first human beings live? Adam, who ate the fruit, lived almost 1,000 years. Imagine if he had enough time to eat the fruit. No wonder why when God, before taking him, it was like, we don't want him to eat the fruit, because he may eat and then live very long in sin. Okay? Satan knew that. He wanted to go to the garden. God closed it. Okay? So then he had no more options. He said, okay, yeah. So these are the reasons why he wanted to destroy human beings. Okay? And I was like, okay, he is going to be with us. Now, it's no longer going to be angels, but it's going to be men and angels fighting against God. Just like now is also men and angels fighting against Satan. Right? Yeah. There's another passage here that I want to read how he did it. That I think is important. He said, let me read this quickly. Satan sought to impress upon them that he was their last and only hope. If they failed here, all prospect of regaining and controlling heaven or any parts of God's creation was hopeless. So basically, their last and only hope is getting the human being. Okay? He doesn't have anything personal with you. He has it with God. And he's using you as the tool to regain what he lost. Okay? Now, he said, if he should come boldly upon Adam and Eve and make complaints of God's own Son, they would not listen to him for a moment, but would be prepared for such an attack. Should he seek to intimidate them because of his power, because so recently an angel, high in authority, he could accomplish nothing. He decided that cunning and deceit would do what might or force could not. Okay, we have a reason why we don't see Satan or demons. Okay, I'm gonna bring you guys back onto the thing I spoke about, virus and bacteria. The same thing Satan is doing. He knows he had no chance, even if you don't read the Bible. He's so miserable that his presence will create, I don't know, he has no peace, right? And if he shows up to you, you'll run away, even if you don't know God. It's like, because he's miserable, right? So he then have to create a veil that I don't know what the nature is. I know he's around here, but there's a veil, there's a dimensional veil that he created it, and he hides himself. And now what? He used human subjects. Just like he used Eve to destroy Adam and create the whole world, he doesn't have to go to everybody. He used one subject to accomplish his job. Because he himself, he wished he could show up and just grab us by the neck, hey, do what I say. Now you could see he cannot do that. First, the angels wouldn't allow him to do so. Second, we wouldn't really, that's the moment we would say, yeah, you're Satan, I'm not going to hear you. That's why he concealed himself in a pretense of good. The forces that are joining in Satan's camp today, they all preaching a greater good for humanity, if that sounds familiar, right? You have to get the discernment. In today's date, it's not just knowledge. You need discernment from the Holy Spirit to see it, because those forces could be up here in the pulpit talking to you. So only the Holy Spirit in the later day will help you to see, because now you can see Satan has hidden himself. He's acting like that. Right. Now, let's close this up. We can go all day talking about what happened, because this is beautiful. I really recommend you guys to have some time reading. This one is way shorter. It's quick and have way better description which event happened into which. And also explain that in the first fall, when Satan was fallen, do you know he regretted? He wanted to before humans were created, he wanted to go back to heaven. He asked for Jesus to pardon him to get back to heaven. Did you know that? He did. Yep. Really, he asked, right? So in this description, right, once he lost the battle, he was kicked out, he realizes first thing, the difference between heaven and earth. And he realizes his misery. He's like, wait, I was happy. Now I'm depressed. Yeah, depression. Let's just keep it there. Depression, right? Now I'm depressed and all these feelings. Oh my goodness. I need to go back in my elder state. So the problem about it is when he got a second interview with Jesus so that he was reinstated, Jesus noticed that he did not repent. He had a remorse, right? You know, when you had all these things and then you lost it, you're like, oh man, oh, I'm sorry, Jesus, I was wrong. But it was more remorse. It was more feeling of the things that he lost rather than the change of heart. And when Jesus told him no, that's when he was mad. He came down with all fury to destroy. But at that time, he did not have a short time though. That was just the beginning. He had a whole 6 years to work. After 4 years, and it says, and I heard a loud voice, verses 10, the Revelation, we're back again. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now it came salvation and the strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. When he was now in space flying around, he saw, I repeat, he saw one of the angels flying and say, can you ask Jesus to up and give me one more chance to come and talk to him? Jesus said, yes, come in. And he tried to say, hey, I regret, can you put me in my position back again? Jesus said, nope. And he then spoke all what he really had in his heart. He came back to earth. He designed the idea to destroy human race. He succeeded. We already spoke about it. Now, he succeeded destroying human race, but he was not able to eat the fruit, right? So he knew, okay, oh man, we're all dying. Humans are dying. So let me kill as many as I can. With what purpose? To cause the most pain in heaven. Every time one of us die is a terrible pain in heaven, even if it's just a baby. He knew that. That's why Satan is killing human beings. That's why he keeps promoting those wars. The more people die, the more cries in heaven, the more void is. Because, and also, like, there's another thing that I just jumped quickly, but the purpose of the creation of human beings, not only that God planned it along, but also because of the void that there's all angels that Satan took with him, God wanted to repopulate that void, right? And he was like, no, These are the ones who are going to go to replace my position, and everybody else. He spoke with these demons, like, hey, we got to stop them from doing that. That's Ellen G. White who said that, right? I'm just summarizing. Yeah, and then he didn't get it. So he's like, then he learned that Jesus, who beat him up in heaven, is actually coming to earth as a human being, smaller than him, weaker than him. My time for revenge. He's going to be here for 33 years. Let me watch out when he's coming. He first thought he was able. Kill him. No. Everybody that looked like Jesus and behaved like Jesus, kill him. Prophets, kill him. Like, who is it? And then he heard, oh, a baby was born in Bethlehem. Kill him. He didn't make it. You know, kill babies. It's interesting that the Bible there's always horror story of babies being killed. And we keep doing that today in a different kind of conversation. We call it abortion. My body, my choice. Anyway, that's another thing. Kill it. And he didn't make it. Now, Jesus came to earth and lived a holy life. In his temptation, remember we spoke about it long ago, he said, you know, all the demons are the ones trying to tempt us because we're just like, for him, like, Paul, little demon, get him. You're going to get him for sure. But when he saw Jesus, like, I don't trust you, little demons. You're not going to make it. I am going to come there and do it myself like I did to Eve because I don't trust you guys. Turn the stones to bread. Throw yourself from there. At least worship me then. Oh man, this guy resisted me. Remember? These are the three temptations. And man, he resisted all my temptations. Okay, at least don't die, Jesus. Don't die. You don't need to die for these human beings. They are ungrateful. Look what they're doing. Don't die in the cross. Look, they're beating you. They're spitting you. Are you really going to accept to die? And just say, let my Father be the will. That death of Jesus, as you already know, it was not human skill in Jesus. It was God the Father punishing Jesus in your behalf, my behalf, and everybody else. Okay? Now, by doing that, Jesus justified the human race. Why did Jesus justify the human race? Because somebody was accusing the human race in heavenly places. We spoke long ago how it happened. Job. That's a good story. Okay? So there was accuser, but after the death of Jesus, these verses 10 make sense. For the accuser of our brother is cast down, which accused the brother in the day of night. And they obviously, there's a part here that say he had a very short time. Okay? That's the time he was cast out as the accuser. He was cast out of heaven because he was blotted out of the sympathy of the angels. Remember, he promoted all this fight under pretense that, hey, I'm going to make your freedom better. I'm fighting for even God himself doesn't know that I'm actually trying to promote his own governor, right? It was confusing, very confusing. Until they saw what he did to Jesus, that's when they realized, oh, wait a second, he is actually evil. No, we see what you really want, right? Don't come here no more. We're not going to listen to your arguments no more. Get out of here, right? Because remember, that's why he existed. God could have said, and I'm wrapping up. I promise you I'm wrapping up. God, as soon as he committed a sin, and that's the question of my friend, if God is God, why did he allow sin to happen? That's the question all of us have, especially when we're going through hard time. Why God allowed this? If God would have killed Satan, right, the reason why God does certain things is mostly not because simply this is what it has to be done, but it's because for the mercy of other people that are around. Remember, there were more than a half of angels that did not fall. They did not follow Satan, but they were still confused. They were like, maybe not. But not only angels, they also say, the Bible and the Ellen White say, there's other words that were created. So killing Satan right away would not eradicate sin. Let me cut it down, right? Okay. In a summary, let me give you an example. When I was in Angola during the war, I grew up, there was two-party fightings. And the one that had the propaganda machine described that the bad one was eating babies alive. It was terrible. And we grew up believing that that is the closest thing to be for a demon. He was killing everybody, blah, blah, blah. We grew up believing he was the evil one. And then eventually he got killed, and things happened. It only took 3 or 4 years. Everybody started realizing, wait a second, did we just kill the right one? Because the real evil, the real disaster we had in Angola, he looked like saint. He spoke nice. In fact, his name was Dos Santos, which means saint, right? He was very well soft speaking, and the whole way. And we're like, yeah, this is the good. This is the one we have. But because the other one was direct, vociferous, and like, you know, he was actually, if you hear him speak, it's like, yeah, he makes sense. But because we heard all these things, like, he had his own motives, the guy was killed. And I remember that day when he was killed. I have never seen that thing ever in my life. What I'm trying to say is the whole sky that I saw that day was red, filled with bullets. It was more shots that I've ever heard than the ones I've run away. People were rejoicing for the death of that guy. And everybody at that time, everybody had a gun. Everybody took their gun and started shooting. There was a lot more people there that day than many words of stray bullets. 2022. I remember that day we took covers. God, we were already in the capital, which was safe. But that day we all went to take cover. Everybody was shooting, everybody. Obviously they were rejoicing and couldn't contain themselves. But it took us less than 5 years to realize, what have we done? Now, why do I bring this story? It's like the propaganda was so well made that we realized and that is true, we experienced it because the government we had was a communist. It's still a communist up to today. The guy on the other side, the devil, was a capitalist. And he preached on we don't need all these things. And the little freedom I can tell that we experience in Angola up to today, thanks to his fight, right? I know this is political, but I was just trying to bring some reality how the devil fights. He doesn't come as evil one. He usually will use a pretense of goodness. And it's very easy to be fooled. As a human being, so did the angels were in the same trance. Because he was not saying God openly that God is wrong. He said, no, I'm trying to help God. I've been the one with him. I've been the one telling you guys what to do for God. So I'm trying to help us to praise our Father. But in reality, no, he wanted to take down God. Right? And that was his aim. That is his aim. He failed, thank God. And he's now looking to fulfill that aim in your heart and my heart. And at the end, he will try to do that. He will want to come as a Christ, and many people will bow down if we don't pay attention on the aspects. This is a beautiful subject. There's a lot to talk. My brain is like going into high speed, and I'm trying to select the words to say, but I recommend my brothers and sisters to look what happened before so that we can see what is coming after. Thank you so much.